Now, our feature for today, the federal government maintains that there's no going back on the removal of subsidy, stating that in the last 14 years, the sum of 10.4 trillion naira has been spent on the petrol subsidy regime. It says any form of subsidy that had been draining government coffers has been stopped, including tariff on electricity, which has also hit 1.7 trillion naira. The federal government also alleges that opportunistic opposition and their allies were also playing dirty politics with the issue of petrol pricing and electricity tariff in the country. Well, joining me now live from London via Skype, I have energy analyst and project manager, Oli Energy Technologies, Olabode Omolere. Good to have you on the Breakfast Show today.
Thanks for having me. Good morning.
Now let's talk about adopting a sustainable pricing model, but first let's analyze the losses accrued from the petrol subsidy regime over the years. The government pegs the figure at about 10.4 trillion naira at a point in time where we still have poor infrastructure in terms of our oil and gas sector, looking at how much we also need in terms of budget deficit and a whole lot more. What do you make of the losses so far?
Well, I agree with the government that the subsidy needs to go. It is not sustainable, and it is more or less for few Nigerians, not the larger group. However, we mustn't forget that 90 million Nigerians are actually in under the poverty line, and that is where the crux of the matter is.
Okay, let's now also look at issues around fully deregulating the oil and gas sector. Let's also consider the price of oil at this point in time, looking at Brent crude and then at the OPEC basket trading at about $40 to $45. But if it goes back to the pre-COVID-19 levels, which hit almost about $70, then it means that the masses would have to pay much more. What sort of pricing template should we then have? Because we can't necessarily leave it entirely to market forces, because the pinch would just be too much.
Well, I agree that the pinch will be too much if this is left to market forces. However, the point is, many Nigerians are not just making enough. If you look at the average Nigerian earns about $47 per month, and that is the issue. So the issue is about making Nigerians earn more, And how do you do this? We need to concentrate on export. 95% of our exports of our FX comes from crude, the sale of crude, and I think we need to make sure our goods are standardized to export, and so that we can earn in dollars and make Nigerians richer, give Nigerians more money to play with. That is where the focus of any government should be. Subsidizing it is a short-term solution, and it's not sustainable. A 10 trillion expense on over just a decade, that's very expensive.
Okay, now, in wrapping up our conversation at this point in time, globally, the conversations going on is looking at alternative fuel, cleaner energy. But at the end of the day, when we look at Nigeria's infrastructure in terms of our refineries, they are pretty much at poor, abysmal levels, and our production, we look at the OPEC cuts and a whole lot more. So now, in terms of investment, what sort of plan do you think we should also put in place, advising government? First and foremost, still maintaining our current resources, and then looking at alternative fuel that we can also explore.
Well, Nigeria is blessed with a mixture, like a mixture of energy resources. From the solar hours to biomass, and I think we must explore this. We must explore it full time, especially now that Nigerians may not be able to afford normal fuel, and this is why the government must remove things like must remove things like the high taxes it put on importation of solar panels. You cannot tell Nigerians you're increasing fuel, and then you're increasing the means to generate energy alternatively. It's either or. It's not a one way. It's not, you can't do both at the same time, except you want to make Nigerians go to archaic ways of sourcing energy like wood, charcoal, which we all know is detrimental to the health, is detrimental to the planet, is not sustainable also.
Okay, thank you very much for your contributions there so far. Now, let's talk about project management and also investing in a plan to establish a stronger refining capacity. The focus now is on Dangote refinery and how much this will bring to the table. But going back to the existing infrastructure that we have, how critical is project management to ensure we have a sustainable plan towards a proper pricing for premium motor spirit?
Well, in any project at all, managing effectively is critical to the success, and the same goes with the refinery. For starters, the Dangote refinery, I think, is a positive addition to the Nigerian energy mix and the energy sector as a whole. Like a capacity of say 79 million per million liters per day, and our consumption is at 60 million, averagely 60 million per day. And so I think that's a positive. However, the other refineries, existing refineries in Kaduna, Warri, and
Port
Port Harcourt,
Harcourt.
I think, if I may, have outlived their usefulness in terms of being under the government, just like the government did with the electric energy sector. I think it's time for that to go to the private sector. Let the private sector own it and run it, and thereby increase the competition in that energy field. And that's the way the prices are able to be more competitive in general.
Going back to refining capacity, at the end of the day, we still have to wait till 2021, 2022 when the refinery from Dangote refineries comes through. But at the end of the day, do you think the government has a strong understanding of what more we can explore in terms of refining, meeting our local demand, and then having exports? Because it doesn't just make any business sense at the end of the day to still largely import petrol.
Well, I think giving Dangote the license, and by the way, it's not only Dangote that has a license, that has been given the license to refine energy products. Some about 4 or 5 other people, other companies have been given this license, and well, of smaller capacity, of course, because Dangote has the largest capacity, and it's maybe only Dangote that will see coming out and being prepared to play the game. But in terms of knowing the problem, I think the government is well aware of the problem. In terms of the will to implement the solution, well, I'd leave that to Nigerians to guess. So it's not about the knowledge of the problem. It's about the will to solve the problem, and I think that's where the government can show more enthusiasm, if you like, and also personally, I'm in favor of a more renewable source of energy. I think the government has a lot to gain and to do in this field.
Okay. Thank you very much for your contribution on the breakfast show today, Olabode Omoleri.
Thank you very much for having me again.
Well, Chef